Привit! Greetings from Berehove in the west of Ukraine. And slightly different message here to what you might have seen in the videos from the eastern part of Ukraine from Patrick Lancaster. It's funny, this kind of message he's never filmed. I wonder why. So I'm going to do another review of some content from Patrick Lancaster, an American who is embedded with the Russian forces in the east of Ukraine. And I did a video that upset a lot of his fans. I'll link it up above here, down below in the description, because it's describing how he is inadvertently documenting war crimes by the Russian side. You can go and check that out. But just a loose translation, there's actually a little bit in English here. It says the territorial defense is working. Yeah, it tells Russian soldiers to go F themselves. Anyways, let's get into the video. Поехали.
Tsar Experience.
This guy here is Taras Shevchenko, the national poet of Ukraine. And let me start by addressing the two most common, I guess, trolling comments that I received in reaction to my reaction to Patrick Lancaster, the first video. And they were that basically, number one, how dare you criticize someone who's putting his life in danger? There are hundreds of thousands, if not over a million, people in the armed forces of Ukraine and Russia who are putting their lives in danger at the moment. Does that mean they're all good? Does that mean they're all bad? Does that mean they can't be critiqued or criticized? That's madness to say, right? And he is, not everybody's a combatant who's in the armed forces, like Patrick Lancaster, although he is wearing combatant apparel. But he's there armed with a camera for I can see and nothing else. But yeah, that doesn't make no sense to me, but it was a big trolling comment that I got. The other trolling comment that I got is, you have no right to criticize them. You're not in Mariupol. Go to Mariupol and film and show the other side. In Mariupol, a city that has just been sacked by the Russian invading forces, of which Patrick Lancaster is a part of. You think I can just drive down there with my big camera here and the Russians are going to be like, oh yeah, here's some Western guy who just showed up with a big camera who we don't know. Oh, let's just let him through to Mariupol, where first of all he might get killed, and then they might even be responsible for it, or it wouldn't be good propaganda for him. It certainly wouldn't be a good appearance if I got shot dead in Mariupol. And anyways, they're not going to let someone through, just a random journalist. I don't even think the Ukrainians will let me out the other side. They'd be too suspicious. Why the hell are you going to Mariupol? If you don't have, number one, a press pass, you have to realize that there is martial law here in Ukraine. And actually, you need to get permission to be able to film basically anywhere that involves anything that might be sensitive. Could be something like filming a bridge as much as that. So, of course, Patrick Lancaster and the other people who are there from the West who are filming in the Russian forces, well, they just ignore that because they're in the parts of Ukraine that are currently occupied. So Ukraine can't impose that martial law de facto on them. And I guess they're there with the permission of the Russian side. But yeah, I doubt the Russian side is going to give me permission to go around, just show up my camera and film what I want. So there are the two biggest trolling comments I received. And I didn't really think they were very compelling. Let's look at another video from Patrick Lancaster. Actually, this one is a video in which he gave an interview to, I guess, people he's friends with or people that support him. So I'm not going to go and critique, go through hours and hours of footage to try and find some tiny bit to critique in it in terms of how he presented his interviews in situ in Mariupol or somewhere else in Ukraine. I'm actually going to take the footage that was used by his supporters, right? Go through that and see, well, how convincing is what he portrays in those particular clips that were chosen by his people who back him. So the video I'm going to react to right now is on the channel of Daniel Dumbril, or Dumbril. Not sure how it's pronounced. And he does an interview with Patrick Lancaster. And let's see how it opens.
Here where the active fighting is going on. Very hard situation, but it's erupting here.
Okay, so the first clip he opens with, I'll link this video also down below in the description, and he uses some footage from Patrick Lancaster's channel, which is apparently supposed to show a firefight breaking out in Mariupol. This is very strange because basically when I look at it, Patrick Lancaster seems to be standing beside a soldier who is returning, I guess fire is the idea here, but he's just standing there with his hands kind of holding his ears because of the noise. But I mean, if this is a real firefight, I don't know, maybe Patrick Lancaster is completely mad and doesn't care for the risk that he's put himself under, but if there's a real firefight, you need to be in cover. And actually, so does the soldier who's beside him. The soldier actually takes a while to get up and start shooting his gun. So yeah, it's just very strange, this opening clip. This is a recent enough clip on Patrick Lancaster's channel. Just very odd, not very convincing that this is a real firefight. Yeah, who stands there and puts their hands over their ears so they don't hear the noise? I mean, you'd be running for cover. If that were the case, if it were a real firefight. So there seems to be someone in the background firing, and then the soldier beside him takes a while to get his gun up. And look, like who stands? I mean, imagine there was return fire on that soldier's position. Well, Patrick Lancaster is going to be in direct line of it. And he doesn't seem worried. It's just very odd. Then the second one, which is from a few years ago in Donbass, and he is in a trench, which is quite common along the line of contact, and there is incoming shell fire.
We're under intense shelling coming from Ukrainian position right now.
All right, so that second clip, I've actually seen it before, and I've seen the entire video, and that actually second one does look very convincing. It seems like he is actually there with the troops, the Russian forces, the Donetsk People's Republic's militia, and yeah, it really looked like there was shelling. At least that was my impression when watching it. It was a lot more convincing, and the other soldier also, their reactions seemed normal for the situation. But yeah, very odd first clip.
I've seen a lot of really terrible videos of Russian-speaking people being persecuted in other parts of Ukraine, you know, being stripped naked, tied up to lampposts, having their faces stained with chemicals, and so much more. Did you ever witness anything similar happening to, you know, pro-Ukrainian or non-ethnic Russians in these eastern regions, either before or after Russia entered into the mix?
All right, so the question is quite specific that was asked by the interviewer. It's like, did you ever witness? It wasn't whether you ever heard about it happening. And basically they're talking about some things that have been happening on the Ukrainian side during this war, is that Ukrainians say that they take people who are looters, or I guess also traitors, potential saboteurs, and they have been tying them to lampposts, marking them, he says, with some chemicals. I'm not there, I can't know if these people are really looters, or they're actually just like, you know, are these war crimes going on, and whether that's an appropriate sentence for a looter to have them tied to a lamppost. But that's fair enough criticism. But what strikes me here is that, have you ever witnessed anything similar on the, I guess, Donbass separatist side? And he says no, and then he denies there's anything similar. Well, that's very problematic, because the head of the former defense minister of the Donetsk People's Republic, Igor Strelkov, and I mention him in quite a lot of my videos because he seems to be the only person on the military side who's able to criticize the current Russian military strategy for winning in this war against Ukraine. By the way, for reference, it is day 67 of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, for when I'm shooting this. And Igor Strelkov himself has indicated that they tortured and killed people that they identified as being pro-Ukrainian in the conflict in Donbass, right? So the war started there in 2014. We'll just say pro-Russian forces took over parts of Luhansk and Donetsk Oblast. So, I mean, he must be aware of that. I mean, he's there every day. So there's just of this blanket denial that, that there's anything untoward about any of the Russian occupation. It's a bit of a whitewash, right? I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say that there's no mistreatment of prisoners by Ukrainians, or Ukrainians have committed zero war crimes in the entire conduct of this war in 2014, because that would be a bit mad to say. I mean, it's not very credible. But there you go, it's kind of like blanket denial. It's very strange. And they also don't go in depth about maybe why the Ukrainians have apprehended people. They call them pro-Russian. Ukraine says that they are either looters or the people who are actually helping the Russian forces, giving sustenance to an invasion. So yeah, not very much context there at all. But anyways, let's go forward to the main clip that I wanted to that I wanted to discuss, because this is something that I saw on Patrick's channel. It was very sensationalist about a swastika, a girl being found dead basically with a swastika carved into her body. Pretty gory. Let's go and have a look. Okay, so I have to click that. I understand that it's got adult content because it's so gory.
We're down here in the basement of the school number 25 here in Mariupol, and we see that this basement was used as a base for Ukrainian forces, and we found a civilian woman with a swastika painted on her chest, in her stomach in blood, dead.
Okay, so apparently it's actually painted onto her body. It's not actually carved into her body. Okay, that was my misunderstanding about the nature of the video. And the title of video that Patrick Lanka has given, woman found tortured in school basement, military base in Mariupol. So in this video, he's been shown around by a Russian soldier, or a soldier from the Russian side, and they're describing it as a Ukrainian military base. They say it was for the Azov battalion. Now the Azov battalion is quite controversial. I have another video about whether Ukraine or Russia needs to be denazified, since that's one of the main allegations from the Russian side, is they're fighting the Nazis by invading Ukraine. Up above in a card down below in the description. So you can watch my video if you want to see about how credible the claims that the Azov regiment today is neo-Nazi, or the Ukrainian forces are Nazi, or the Ukrainian government is Nazi, or not.
Это Azov?
Ну, это отходили они, я не знаю, кто это. Вот местный житель, скорее всего.
Это мирный.
Ну да, ну, блядь, ну, крестов наши бы не резали. Свастик.
So here he's been shown a body of what appears to be a civilian woman, and he asked the soldier, was this done by Azov? So that's the Ukrainian forces. And the soldier says, I don't know by whom. They were retreating, most probably it's a civilian. Is a civilian, yes. And he says, our guys would not leave such crosses. Swastika, that's for sure. Now, what struck me about this is, why would supposed neo-Nazis be putting swastikas on the bodies of people they allegedly kill, if this is what happened here? Is that what they normally do? Is that a pattern that we've seen during the war? As far as I'm aware, no. It actually could just as easily be a swastika painted on the body by Russian soldiers, maybe even this guy here he's interviewing. How do we know? Yeah, because maybe they think that she's a Nazi, and that's why they're smearing it on her body. It could be just as easily the other way. In fact, I would say it's more logical, we'll say, that if there is logic to any of this, to be from the other side, the Russian side.
Свастик. Уж явно. Забирать некому. Своих не всегда успеваем забирать.
And he says there's no one to take it away. I mean, why is this body still lying there? That should be a good question to ask. And Patrick just happens to be called to seem to film it first.
Что это место?
Это 25-я школа города Мариуполя. Общеобразовательная школа. Ну, здесь базировалось подразделение 100% по опознавательным знакам Национальной гвардии, и предположительно батальона Азов бойцы были. То есть при наступлении их выбили отсюда, форму свою, они личные вещи побросали, переоделись в гражданские вещи и вышли с оружием в город, в гражданских вещах. То есть они не обозначают себя военными, они передвигаются как гражданские, а действуют в военных целях. Много вещей, смешного размера. 38 размер обуви, 38. То есть это маленький размер, это женские вещи. То есть тут и женщин много принимало участие в этих боевых действиях на стороне украинской армии.
So this is very interesting. Later on, the soldier says that, like he's shown that there's a lot of Ukrainian uniforms, and then he says there are a lot of clothes of a ridiculous size. For example, the shoes are 38 size, I guess 38 EU size. It's a small size, so those are female shoes. This means that many women also took part in the fighting, and then he's saying that they changed into civilian clothes. So this would seem, from what the Russian soldier is saying, that this could be actually not a civilian, this could be a female Ukrainian fighter, and then she's changed into civilian clothes, and then she is dead here with the swastika painted on her in blood. But how does Patrick Lancaster react?
Можно предать себя?
Еще раз не понял.
Представьте.
Белка позывной.
Ага, вы какой войска?
Я ДНРовский.
ДНРский.
He just asked the soldier to introduce himself. He doesn't ask any more questions. A bit strange.
The basement of the school. They used it as a base.
So then Patrick goes on to basically focus on the fact that this is an alleged base for Ukrainian soldiers. I mean, that seems plausible in this case that it was, based on what he sees there. But he's not asking questions about the woman very much. Just like, yeah, it seems just as plausible that she was a Ukrainian fighter and that she may have just died there. And then how did it end up with a swastika painted in blood on her body? He doesn't really ask any in-depth questions. It seems to figure that out. He just accepts the story given by the Russian soldier. The Russian soldier could just easily kill her and put that himself there. Yeah, it's fog of war and everything. It's not very convincing. Just very sensationalist, the whole story.
And we could see the Ukrainian flag here.
And he's just focusing on the fact there's a Ukrainian flag there. I mean, sure, it could have been a base in a school. I guess that's what he wants to present as his main story, on top of grabbing everyone's attention with swastikas painted on bodies.
Это женщина, который...
Это мы зашли в это помещение, это уже так и было.
Да?
Это, скорее всего, это гражданская, которая рада была тому, что город освобождают.
Ага.
Или пыталась выйти.
So они сделали свастика?
Что они сделали, да.
So the soldier says that they just found the woman there dead with the swastika painted and blood on her body, and that he starts to speculate that it's a civilian woman. He's glad that the city was being liberated. And Patrick asks us, so that's why they made the swastika. Well, you see what they did. Yeah, the whole thing is just not very... I just have more questions after asking it, after seeing the clip on Patrick's video than I have anything answered for me when I watch it, to be frank. Could be lots of different scenarios here, and Patrick just seems to accept the Russian soldier. Well, I understand he's part of the same military, so he probably doesn't want to start asking things like, did you kill her? Why would the Ukrainians paint a swastika on her? Isn't that someone who might think that she is a Nazi, put on her dead body or dying body in order to label her a Nazi? Or it could have been the Ukrainians. I mean, just have we seen a pattern of that behavior from before by Ukrainian troops dealing with maybe people that they consider to be traitors? Because that's kind of the implication here in what the Russian soldier is saying. He's saying that it's a civilian woman who was glad that the city was being liberated, so he's trying to say a pro-Russian invasion civilian. But they don't have any evidence of that whatsoever. So the whole thing is just like speculation with a gory scene. I understand why this video gets a lot of views, 660,000 already, and it's a month old, because, yeah, I mean, this is pretty sensationalist. But is this real journalism? Again, I go back to what I put in the last video, which is that 1939 German video about the invasion of Poland, and I don't think we call the person who made it a journalist today. We see it more or less as a propaganda film for justifying that invasion. Patrick Lancaster has already in the interview said that basically, this doesn't happen on the Russian side, so that the Russians would do something like that. But we already saw what the former defense minister said. He basically said they do the gory things like that. And I'm sure both sides do. It's not like you don't have to, whitewash one side to say that they're good. I guess that's the tendency in propaganda in general, to say that the Ukrainians are all good or the Russians are all good and the other side is all bad. But, it's about the degree of adhering to the rules of law, the rules of war, where we're looking at. And both sides have clearly violated them. It's just about the extent. And for me, obviously, the fact that Russia invaded is an invading army, in particular here. And I think that's something that a lot of people who support Patrick Lancaster's work for a long time aren't really understanding. Like, it was a different situation when it was just the war in Donbass from 2014 to 2022. Obviously, Russia annexed Crimea beforehand, because there, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. There's an adage like that. So if you believe that the Donbass separatists are representing the people of Donbass and they want their own independence, and those, Ukrainian nationalists come and quash what the people want there, the vast majority. If you buy into that, then of course you see them as freedom fighters. Whilst if you say that, well, this is a bunch of thugs who were given guns by Russia and have taken over against the people's will there, now chased out basically all the people who wanted to live there in peace or pro-Ukrainian, and what's left is more or less the people who are kind of, I guess, more sympathetic to Russia, which is from what I understand, about half the population or less than half the population for sure, that were in those areas. And that's not even the whole of Donbass. I mean, there's a bigger part of Donbass that people stayed in, presumably going to be more pro-Ukrainian in that part. Well, it was different when he was filming that first clip where there was the shelling, and now when he's actually part of clearly an invading army that has just sacked the city of Mariupol. And yeah, who's going to go and give an interview to a guy with the Russian forces flanked by soldiers who has a camera? Well, it's unlikely to be the people. I go on camera and be very candid and say, yeah, I'm against the fact that Russia came and destroyed this city, because it's absolutely leveled the city, almost everything, and that's looking at the images shown by the Russian side. For example, they have like now the almost infamous video with these Chechen fighters where there's like a fire in the background.
Можем сказать, что Мариуполь, город, полностью очищен со стороны Азовсталя. Это административное здание Азовсталя. Спецоперация по уничтожению и очистке Мариуполя сегодня, можно сказать, завершено. Указание президента страны Владимира Владимировича Путина выполнено.
They're celebrating having destroyed the city, basically. And those guys were also on mainstream Russian TV, on primetime Russian state TV afterwards as well. So just looking at the Russian side and how they show, like who in their right mind is going to go over to Patrick Lancaster flanked by Russian soldiers in this scene that's basically like hell. It looks like, you know, the scenes we saw in the Second World War in 1945, just put a black and white filter on it and say, you know, go up to the camera and goes, you know, Russians go home. Who's going to do that? Maybe a couple of people, but most people would be too terrified. Probably just want to get out of there. So yeah, this is also going to end up with quite a one-sided version of what's going on. Anyways, let me finish this. I just want to react to a couple of clips, since in the first video I didn't actually react so much to what he was portraying in his videos. I know he has hours and hours of stuff there. But interestingly, near the beginning of the video, Alex, who is from Reportify, who commented under my video, my first video, he kind of outlines what he thinks is the value of Patrick Lancaster's work. So let's have a listen.
To give you more context on Patrick, he has documented over 8 years. This is one of the most historic archive of video that has gone on in this area. This is going to go down as part of history of what he is doing.
Well, definitely. I never deny that his footage that he's shooting is going to be used in, potentially used in future war tribunals for war crimes, or maybe even domestic tribunals. The thing is, like, that the main point in my first reaction video is that, well, he's inadvertently recording Russian war crimes, and that footage will probably be used in the long run in any sort of future war crimes tribunal, but it doesn't mean that it'll actually be the way that he wanted it to be used for. So he's interviewing a lot of people, claim that there's Ukrainian war crimes in a lot of situations that seem completely implausible. Like, for example, like I pointed out, people claim that the Ukrainians are blowing up their own city when Russia invaded. It just doesn't make much sense to me when, when we see them level the city, and that we see a pattern from previous conflicts where similar things happen, like in Chechnya and in Syria. We're expected to believe that that he's recording exclusively Ukrainian war crimes. Alex Rygiel, sometime I think they will be used, probably his footage, in future war crimes tribunals, but I'm not so sure that it's only going to be used when Ukrainians are indicted. It'll also be when Russians are indicted. If there ever is a war crimes tribunal for this war, that's going to be pretty tricky because Russia is a permanent member of the UN Security Council. In general, unfortunately, permanent members of the Security Council can veto all this kind of stuff. They're probably not going to agree to it, and it's going to be probably pretty hard to put them on trial. But anyways, let's see. Maybe Alex meant that it's going to be part of some sort of Russian kangaroo court, and they're going to use Patrick Lancaster's footage as evidence in that. Well, let's see what happens. Anyways, that is my reaction. It's just some of this, just a few clips that was used by his supporters. So let me know what you think down in the comments. Do you think that his footage represents real combat situations, like I've shown, that were taken by his supporters in this video, posted as kind of dramatic? intro to his work. Also the girl with the Nazi swastika painted on her body. What do you think about how that is presented? Just two examples of his work that his followers decided to use, that his supporters decided to use before they interviewed him. So that's it from this video from me. And over there, if you can see him, Taras Shevchenko, do pobачення, до свидання, слава Україні.
SAR Experience.